Good evening, everybody. Thank you very, very much for coming this evening. I'm Juliet Collins and I'm the Assistant Principal with responsibility for curriculum here at Rangiruru. So one of the large parts of my portfolio is assessment exams, NCEA and the curriculum obviously. So NCEA stands for the National Certificate of Educational Achievement. And it is the main qualification, it is our national qualification. It isn't the only one. There are other qualifications, but they are not registered on the New Zealand Qualifications Framework, and those would be things like IB and Cambridge exams. So you might have know people at St Margaret's doing IB or at Boys High doing some Cambridge exams. So the National Certificate of Educational Achievement, we are very, very committed to it, and I guess it's probably fair for me to declare that up front, that I'm a big fan of NCEA, and I think that part of my reason for being so keen on it is that I'm old enough to have been teaching through school certificate, sixth form certificate and bursary times, and I can with hand on heart completely say that what we've got now is better, much more fit for purpose and much more suitable for the 21st century learning that we want our young people to be engaged in and for their futures going forward. It is nonetheless a complete and utter mystery to many people who haven't done it themselves, and that's why you're here tonight to a large extent, and I have complete sympathy for that. It does have some complexities and it does have some things that are really, really simple about it. So it's our main qualification. It's the only one we do. It's the only one we're interested in doing, and we're completely committed to doing the absolute best we can for your daughters within the framework of that National Certificate of Educational Achievement. It comes in 3 levels, levels 1, 2 and 3, which roughly equate to year 11, year 12 and year 13, pretty much. It isn't the only thing on the New Zealand Qualifications Framework. There are a whole lot of other things that sit there as well. Trade certificates, for instance, operating mostly from level 4 and up, sit on that. So you can put together over your working career a portfolio of things that can operate on the National Qualifications Framework. However, for our purposes, levels 1, 2, 3 and university entrance are what we are interested in, primarily interested in. And I'm going to detail the things, what each one comprises of, and give you some information about university entrance, which is an additional qualification. Level 2 is kind of the bare minimum of entry requirement for most jobs. Currently, 85% of the cohort nationally achieve level 2, not necessarily in their year 12 year, but whilst they're at school. So it has a high success rate, and the national government was very committed to raising levels of achievement within level 2 NCEA, and they did that. You could debate how they went about doing that, but certainly those are the statistics. And all of our students achieve level 1. We have about 98% of our students achieving level 2, and a very similar amount achieving level 3 and university entrance. And our university entrance slightly. Level 3 last year was 96% and UE 95 point something or other percent. So a very small number of our students don't gain their qualifications, and those are for a variety of reasons. Some don't just choose that somehow they will not manage to get their qualifications, no matter how hard everybody is working to help them over that. Some get sick. Unwell, and so we know at a very micro level whether they're going to achieve. Everybody knows that in advance, and families are well warned. So we don't like any surprises around qualifications. I just have to assure you of that. So level 2 is kind of the minimum requirement for entry into lots of things. And actually, level 3 now and university entrance is becoming increasingly the cut-off for entrance to many polytech courses, for instance into ARA. If you want to go nursing, you need level 3 to do that. However, if you haven't got level 3 in the correct subjects, there is a pre-nursing course that you can do that will give you those level 3 credits. So there are ways of around that. But if you want to go directly into nursing, then you need your level 3 qualifications and university entrance. Okay, so this is absolutely true. It isn't like it was when we were at school. It just is not. And the big difference between what we had when we were at school and NCEA is that NCEA is an ongoing qualification that you accrue your credits towards your certificate throughout the year. And that's the big difference. Remember in the old days where you could virtually do nothing all year, pull a couple of all-nighter weeks at the end, memorise like anything, sit the exam and forget it all the next day but still pass. Yeah, those days are over. So it doesn't operate like that. So it does start on the 31st of January or the 1st of February or whenever school starts, learning starts that contribute towards their qualifications and it runs all year. So, and it's not new. Everyone talks about the new qualifications, but we're 15 years into the qualification now, and it was introduced initially in 2002, and there was and in consecutive years, and that's very deliberate because, of course, that's a term of government. So it was introduced, and so the same students, that cohort were the guinea pigs for the introduction of level 1, 2, and 3 across those 3 years. So since that time, of course, there's been a lot of refinement to what it is that is taught, what it is, how it's assessed, and how the evidence for that is presented. What hasn't changed is the New Zealand curriculum. And our curriculum document is the best. It is absolutely the best in the world, our curriculum document. It is broad, it's open, it allows for really creative teaching and learning. It's relevant, it doesn't leave out any skills and knowledge, and it includes capabilities and competencies that you want all your young people, your daughters to be. So it's a great document. And that's one document, and then there's the qualifications framework that sits alongside it, which assesses what is taught in the curriculum. Two modes of assessment: internal assessment and external. So I'll just explain that because that's really an important point. Is internal assessment are assessments that are ongoing. They do the learning at school, they do the assessment at school, they gain the credits for that. Those are summative assessments, they are over and done with, and the external ones are the ones that are done in the NCEA exams in November at the end of the year. So courses are made up of internals and externals, and I will explain a little bit more about that as we go along. Now, it is standards-based assessment. So the standards are set by the Ministry of Education. It's a common misconception that the standards change and that the students set the standards. That is not true. The standards are written, they are published, they are certified, they are quality assured, and the students, the girls, produce evidence that in response to that standard. So I think that's an important distinction. So the standard remains constant, and the evidence is produced as part of the as a result of the teaching that goes on. So I've said that up there. Now there's two kinds of standards, and we were just talking a little bit before, and somebody mentioned standards in, I mentioned standards in barista, and somebody else mentioned standards in hockey coaching. And there are two types of standards: unit standards and achievement standards. Unit standards are really more mastery. You can either do something or you can't do something. So, for example, the barista standards fall into that. They're not measuring the quality of the coffee. They're measuring whether you can make the coffee or not. So those are kind of can-do-it. Mechanics, for instance, those fall into that. The driver's license standards, for example, which we don't do here. They're all unit standards. And achievement standards most of our courses are made up from achievement standards. Not in its entirety. There are some digital technology unit standards that we use, particularly around database functionality and those kinds of things. Can do it, can't do it kind of thing, where there's not a lot of quality built in. A lot of the English second language standards are still unit standards, but the majority of our courses are achievement standards. So this thing, AS, you see quite a lot around various documentation, stands for achievement standards. Okay, so a course is made up of standards, achievement standards or unit standards, and each standard is worth a specific number of credits. So that's the term we use, not points but credits that you accrue. Assessments measure how well the learning meets the standard, and there are 3 levels of achievement. Achieved, well actually there's 4. There's not achieved, which is not a level of achievement, it's a not achieved, or achieved or merit or excellence. So there are those exist. Now they very rarely exist in unit standards, they all exist in achievement standards. There's only one achievement standard that doesn't have the full range, and that's a microscope one that they do at level 2 biology, which only goes up to a merit, which is quite bizarre and quite unusual, but they obviously felt that they couldn't write an excellence criteria for that particular standard. So that's, I think, quite straightforward there. So a course, I guess, is NZQA talk. They love acronyms for all sorts of things. You get MOE, NZQA, all these things. There's a whole different lexicon around education, but the course is another word for subject. So a course is the learning and assessment plan for any particular subject. So that is, so your daughter will do at year 11, she will do 6 full subjects and a half course. The half course is PE. 2 periods of PE a week is compulsory, and in that she'll do 2 achievement standards, one worth 4 credits and one worth 5 credits. So she'll do 9 credits of compulsory PE, and in most of her other courses she will do a maximum of 19 credits in any given one. Now, on Rangi Life we have, so this is the open page of Rangi Life. You don't have to log into your parent portal or do anything like that. You just have to go to Rangi Life. And if you click on course information there, which is really clear, it'll go to the next slide, which shows you the course information. The current one has got the assessment schedules for 2018 and all of the course outlines. So actually you can log in and see some information. Now you might choose to never do that, and that's absolutely fine, but you might choose to actually want to look at what is in your daughter's English course or your daughter's maths course, and more importantly, when she says, no, I haven't got any homework, there's no homework, and no, we haven't got any assessments due, you can click onto the assessment schedule and go in and have a look. And that's quite handy. So this is kind of exclusive to us. I don't know that other schools do all this necessarily, but it gives you a really good indication of what's happening. So if you were to click on level 1, for instance, Helena, you'd see on the next slide all of the subjects listed there. And if you click on that again, click on 1, say English, embedded in the description of the entire English course will be the program of learning. The courses, in 2016 we made a decision on behalf of our students that they were doing too much assessment. That this is a national issue, how much assessment they're doing at level 1, and courses can comprise of anywhere up to about 24 credits. But if you do the maths, 24 times 6 plus 9, you get to well over more than you need in terms of credits. And so we made a decision to limit all of our level 1 courses to a maximum of 19 credits. So some courses are 16, some are 17, some are 18, and some manage to get to 19, and it depends a little bit on the credit value of them. So if I did some quick maths, 4 3s 12, 13, 15, 16, 17, 21. So this one here was 21, which they're doing one less standard than this now. So over on the left, you can see the curriculum objective. You can see the achievement standard, which has got the achievement standard number. So these are the titles: creative writing, formal writing, oral presentation, and there's this registration number here. And the reason that that can be quite useful is that that is if you want to know what the standard is actually about, if you put that code into the search engine in NZQA, you will bring up the standard. You will bring up all of the exemplar material that relates to that standard. So that's quite a useful thing to know. No one ever knows them off by heart. They're a special secret code that I can't work it out. But it does tell you here too the mode of assessment. So internals or externals, the version numbers you don't have to worry about, we have to worry about that. And the credit value of those standards. Now, the credit value is roughly equated to 1 credit being around about, NCEA guidelines, 10 hours of teaching and learning. So that's class time, homework time, research time. So we sort of say that that's about a week. It's a bit of a week and a bit, it's a bit over that. So you would take a 3 credit standard and that would take you about 4 weeks to do that standard. And then you can extrapolate out that standards that are worth more credits take longer, have more learning in them, are more in depth, are potentially got more components going on in them. This is what a standard actually looks like when this is an NZQA document. It's not very pretty, but it is the actual standard for level 1 English, and it is the written text. It is the exam at the end of the year. It's the external, and you can see here the different levels of achievement. So when I said before that the standard already exists, that we don't create the standard, the girls aren't creating the standard is there, it's registered. And it shows you that to get achieved, you have to understand the aspect of the book, the novel that they're studying, and use evidence. And then to achieve with merit, it has to be convincing. And then to get excellence, it has to show perceptive understanding. So following on from that is some notes that unpick the language. And that's why it's sometimes quite useful to see those actual standards. Because you could say that they've got to, this is the nature of an achievement standard, is to make a judgment about the evidence that's produced. And that's the really crucial thing. That's where the teaching and the learning actually happens, is in the distinctions between those descriptors there. So the teachers are highly experienced. They know what the evidence for excellence looks like. They will be working with your daughters to help them to learn the distinctions between achieved merit and excellence, and to aim for the level of work that they want to achieve, which is our girls like to aim for excellence. They do, and and not everybody gets there. Not everybody is excellent, not everybody can be, but that doesn't stop them from wanting to try for that, and that's, I think, to be really admired. But these judgments are what we have to do is remove the subjectivity between these judgments. Is really important. So we have processes to do that. So level one certificate, you need 80 credits. So do you remember before when I was trying to do that maths of 24 times 6 plus 9, and I said you get lots more than you need? Well, that's a lot more than 80. So they need to get 80 credits, and 10 of those credits need to count for literacy, and 10 credits need to count for numeracy. Now, the girls, if you work out 19 times 6, you'll still get more than 80. So there is plenty of opportunity for them to get credits. But what really matters are the quality of those credits. So they need to achieve enough, and they need to achieve them at sufficient depth. So I'll come to that shortly. But just to clarify a couple of things, Level 1 has Level 1 literacy attached. English is compulsory, so all of our students achieve their literacy credits in English. There are lots of other subjects where they can get it, but they all get it through English anyway. And 10 credits of numeracy. Level 1 maths is compulsory, so they get their numeracy through that generally as well. So they got to gain their credits in literacy and numeracy, but I would strongly advise students, any opportunity I get, not to quit maths too soon, especially if they don't know what it is that they want to do. If they want to go nursing, they'll need level 2 statistics. They need to do some mathematics and often keep going, but some choose to quit maths the first opportunity they get, which is the end of year 11, but just caution you about that. I'm sure you know about that. For some people who cannot do any maths at all and for whom it's a nightmare, I've been getting some nods up in the corner there, am I? Who find it a nightmare, then that's probably a relief for them. But great. So we have the two modes of assessment, external and internal. The NCEA administer the external exams. They write the external exams. They manage the external process. We get lots of guidelines from NCEA about compliance around all of that, around everything actually to do with qualifications. The communication from NCEA is very good. The booklet you've got tonight is published by them. They send that out hard copy. It's available online as well. Internal assessments are administered by the school, and as I said, they're all available to look at online, but they are monitored very carefully by NCEA. There's two types of endorsement available to your girls, the certificate endorsement and this course endorsement. Certificate endorsement is 50 credits at a level, either merit or excellence, and that will give them their certificate with excellence. And then there's subject endorsement, where they have to do 14 credits in one particular subject, and it has to be a combination of internals and externals, except in subjects that have absolutely no externals. So PE, for instance, doesn't have any externals, but you can still get endorsement in that. Religious education doesn't have any externals. So 50 credits, they don't have to be from any exams. They can just be from internal assessments. So some girls will have excellence endorsement in their certificates before they go to the NCEA exams, which begs the question of why? Why bother? Why do that? But if you're going to go to university, you need to be able to sit an exam. You need that discipline of being able to do both of those things, internals and externals. It's good preparation for more than just sitting exams. But that doesn't mean they need to do absolutely all of the externals that they are down to do, and some girls choose to not do that, which seems really scary for parents, I think, that they might go to a 3-hour exam knowing that they've got to do 2 papers and only do 1, but they might already have their qualifications securely. So some make considered decisions, some come for advice, which is a great idea, and some just choose not to do some exams. So that's that, but you don't get subject endorsement unless you go to the exams, and those credits have to be gained from a single year. So some of your daughters in year 10 now will be doing credits. They'll be doing achievement standards. If they've done visual arts, they'll have done the handmade book, and that's a 4-credit internal. They'll be doing in English, they'll be doing an internal, I think most people are doing that, and some will have the option of doing an external as well. So they'll be gaining standards now. If they're only doing internals, and I don't mean only in any derogatory sense, but they're only doing internals, we bank those for them and give them to them next year. Now we do that because otherwise it costs an additional $76.30 for everybody, and that just seems like money to NCEA when you can get those the following year. But if you're doing an external, that has to be done in that year, so you have to pay that fee. That is the fee for all of your exams on the qualifications framework, except for scholarships. So annual fee for that is $76.30. which goes on your gold sheet. Scholarship exams are $30 each, and that's separate, but we don't need to talk about that necessarily this year. So that's why bother to do a bit more, why work a bit harder, why go for those levels of achievement, and it's because they are bright and shiny, little rewards. We reward them in school with pockets and colours, academic pockets and colours. If they gain 50% of the available achievement standards at excellence level, between 50 and 70% they get an academic pocket, and over 70% they get academic colour. That's not 50 credits, that's the percentage of achievement standards available, because some courses, for instance visual arts, only does 2 standards, one of them's worth 12 credits, that's the big portfolio. So they're not disadvantaged against a subject like maths that has 6 standards which you can do. So I add them all up and I make a fraction, and then I work out the percentage, and if it's between 50 and 70 they get a pocket, and if it's over 70 they get a colour, and if they get 100% in their top 5 subjects they get elite colours. So we had 64% of our students last year get excellence endorsement at level 1. It's absolutely sensational. They perform incredibly well, and they really are aiming for those rewards. So when you hear in the media often that there isn't any incentive to do well in NCEA, there's often self-incentivisation is often sufficient, but also there's these other things. Now, the advantage of, at level 1, the advantage of an excellence certificate is for themselves and for the school and for their academic pockets or colours or whatever it is they might be going for. If they, at level 2, however, when they apply for halls of residence and scholarships for universities when they're in year 13, the highest qualification they currently hold is their level 2 certificate. They haven't got level 3 then. It's only pending. So actually, the quality of their level 2 certificate really does matter. Canterbury University, if you get an excellence in level 2 and an excellence in level 3, they'll give you $6,000 when you enrol, when you go to Canterbury University. It's a total incentive based on your excellence, based on that, on the quality of your certificate. So if you're applying for a Victoria Leaders of Tomorrow scholarship or an Otago Outstanding Performance scholarship, you want shiny qualifications to send with your application, and that's an endorsed certificate at level 2. Of course, it becomes increasingly difficult. Level 1 is a particular level, level 2 is a step up, level 3 is a step up from that. And if you think about, well, when I was at school, about 5% of the population went to university. Now it's over 20, it's closer to 25% of the population go to university. So there's lots more people are gaining those certificates in level 3. People are staying at school. Nobody from here leaves after level 1. No one leaves with level 1 as their highest qualification, virtually no one. Which begs another question of why do we do level 1, but I'll come to that at the end. So the subject endorsement does matter. The girls tell me year after year after year that level 2 is more than a step up from level 1, and it's a bigger step between level 1 and level 2 than it is between level 2 and level 3. So it's a big step up to level 2. And so that actually trips some girls, some people up. You need to be ready for it. Level 1 is skills and knowledge, really. Level 2 is more about analyse it. You know, you get into the more critical thinking, more evaluation, more analysis of stuff into level 2. So it is a step up in terms of the curriculum. Okay, so the subject endorsement, 14 credits, 3 credits from each one at least for that, except for PE, which doesn't have that. Level 2 is, again, 80 credits, but it's 60 credits at level 2 and 20 credits from any other level. So basically, it's 60 credits of level 2, and the 20, you don't have to have 20 extra in level 1 or anything like that. It just has to be any old 20 credits. And it doesn't even have to be at any level of endorsement. In fact, it's a weird way to write the whole thing, actually. But nonetheless, and you can read it in your booklet, they've written it slightly differently this year, but it still means exactly the same thing. So you need 60 credits at level 2, you need 60 credits at level 3, provided you've got the 20 coming in. Now, the literacy and numeracy at level 1 are a requirement for the level 1 certificate. There is no level 2 literacy, there's no level 2 numeracy. The only literacy component after level 1 is UE literacy, which comes from, mostly comes from level 2 English. So you can gain your UE literacy by doing level 2 English, which is why all the girls talk about level 2 literacy, which we just roll with because for all intents and purposes, but they need 5 credits in reading and 5 credits in writing. Now, if you haven't glazed over already, if I continue to talk about literacy, you soon will. It's ridiculously complex. There are pages of standards that count for level 1 literacy. There's a smaller page of standards that count for UE literacy, and the ones that count for reading, and there's some that count for writing, and some standards count for this and some standards count for that. Basically, that's what you're paying for. You can count on us to take care of your daughter's literacy requirements and make sure you or she knows whether she's got them or not. Okay, so just be assured that if she hasn't got her UE literacy by the time she finishes level 2, then I'm nagging her to complete the standards that she needs to do that as soon as possible. And actually, in level 2, they come from, they really need to do an external in order to cover off the reading, the reading part of the literacy component. They do a writing portfolio in level 2 that's 6 credits, so that takes care of the whole thing, which is really nice. But yeah, look, it took me several years to get my head around it entirely, and don't think we're going to do it here in 5 minutes. So we'll move on from literacy. So you can see that level 2, you need 60 credits at that level plus 20 carryover from the year before, and then you get the same pattern rolling through to level 3. So that's your qualifications. I'll have the next slide. Thank you, Helena. And then UE, which is rigorous, robust. It is the most, the highest of the leaving qualifications. It's more complex than level 3 because all sorts of things contribute to level 3 potentially, including the barista standards if you did any, which we don't. But you can count unit standards towards level 3, but you cannot count unit standards towards UE. You can count unit standards towards level 3, but you can't count them towards UE. They don't recognise them for university entrance. They have an approved subjects list, and the 14, you have to do 3 packages, 3 subjects which are on the UE approved list, and get 14 credits in each one. Doesn't matter if it's internal or external, doesn't have that complexity, but it has to be. So basically what they're saying is, can this person sustain a course of study at an in-depth level and succeed? 3 times. So the subjects on the approved list are, all of the subjects that we do are on the approved list. So our philosophy course, which there are no standards in philosophy, the standards that they do in level 3 philosophy come from the religious education domain, and so they make up a package of 14 credits that way. So all of our subjects are on the approved list. Some subjects, there is a thing called level 3 physics. I'm sure you're all aware of that, level 3 physics, and then there's also a thing called level 3 science. So if you do need 14 credits in physics, then obviously that's a robust course. If you don't get that many, but you get some credits in physics and some credits in chemistry, and they count up to 14, then you get UE science. So actually the sciences get a couple of bites at the apple and in multiple ways. And the same in mathematics, because there's statistics and calculus, and there's a UE mathematics as well. which is kind of unfair to the humanities, where you could put a really fantastically interesting course of history and classics together and actually have some really great learning, but it won't, they come from different domains. So actually it's UE that probably hinders our curriculum construction the most. This has been reviewed in the last year and that didn't change. So the country's very committed to UE. Having said that, some of the universities have other requirements as well. So for example, Auckland University, you have to have 18 credits of either level 2 or level 3 English. So here, level 2 English is compulsory, so that's easy. But you can perhaps understand with the changing nature of the Auckland population why they might have an English requirement as part of their entry into the university. You can do an English proficiency test as an alternative to that, but they've made that a requirement. All Australian universities, I think, in every state, to gain entry with NCEA, you have to have level 3 English, and you can't have anything else that's Englishy, another righty subject, and it can't be history or classics or any of those sorts of things. Auckland University have two lists, a list A and a list B. This is the more sciencey, mathsy things, this is the more humanities, artsy things, and you have to have some from each to get in. So you've got to keep an eye on that. If you want to study engineering at Auckland University, you have to do level 3 physics and you have to do the 3 external exams in level 3 physics. There's only 3 available, you have to do all 3. That is about the most rigorous course you could be doing. So Canterbury Engineering don't require all 3, 2 is fine, same with health sciences. So different requirements at the universities, it's not all as consistent as just UE. Okay. That's enough, I can sense wriggling on that one. So we'll go to the next slide, Helena. Okay, so how do we know it's all legit? And which is a really important and valid part of our process, that we are compliant with all of NZQA's quality assurance systems, of which there are many, which really requires all schools to have, well, it does require all schools have to have a thing called a principals nominee, for whom all NZQA communications come into the school via that person, and they oversee all of those processes. Here, that I hold that role as well as the curriculum one, so that's me here. So we have moderation, and it's a really, really important part of the assessment process. So your daughter's doing her course, she's got 3 internal assessments in her course and 2 external assessments, so 2 exams at the end of the year. So throughout the year, she's doing work on some of the internals, and they will be completed and handed in a particular time. Some courses might be doing 2 internals as one body of work, and they'll hand those in. They might have checkpoints along the way, and they'll hand those in at a particular time, and then those are summative. At the same time, you have to slot into the school year, of course, the learning for those externals. You can't do it all at the end of the year. The year runs out. So you do some of that during the year, and then you revisit that. So that makes up a course of learning, and that's entirely up to the teacher how that is managed. So whilst they're doing when they finish an internal assessment and hand that in, so there will have been checks and milestones that have to be met along the way. And I have to say, the learning management system that we use, OneNote, is fantastic for that, absolutely fantastic. So the girls put their work into OneNote, or they do their work into OneNote, the teacher can see it there. It's date stamped as they do that work and as the teacher does it, and you can do direct feedback and that kind of stuff. It works really, really well for those things. Once the work is handed in and the teacher marks it, that's done in a variety of ways to ensure comparability between the classes, to ensure comparability across the whole between the subjects to some extent. So, for instance, in English, one teacher will mark the whole of one section across the whole year level, and then another teacher will mark another section across the whole year level. And in some subjects, they'll mark their own class's work, and they'll bring 5 pieces in from that class, and they'll compare them and make sure that they're all that an achieved in one class is the same as an achieved in another, and an excellence is the same as the other. So there's lots of checks and balances that go on. And that's the moderation process. So sometimes you hear your daughter say, well, I handed that in ages ago. She said she's marked it, but it hasn't been moderated. That process does take time. And it's usually, we try really hard to go for a maximum of 4 weeks between the hand-in and the completion of the moderation process. But when it's relying on, if it's, say, English and maths, which are the ones I've talked about, that's easy to manage because there's lots of English teachers here and there's lots of maths teachers, so you can do your moderation here. But if you're geography, for instance, you're a lone wolf. There's only one, so we rely on our colleagues in other schools moderating our work, and they do the same, and we do the same for them. So teachers are part of networks, and they'll take their work along to a markers meeting, and they'll also and that happens for every single assessment that they do. So no marks are entered on our database that haven't been quality assured. And there's a process and there's forms that we go through. And when teachers talk about workload, that contributes quite a bit of it. But that's the robustness of the system. So that's really important that happens. And there are two parts to that. And that's internal. So the process I just described is the internal one. The external one, which isn't to do with external exams, it's just the same word. It's the external process for internal moderation. At the beginning of each year in March, NCEA send us a list of standards that we have to send 8 pieces of work for every one of those standards in every year, in that particular year. So we distribute the standards. The teachers, once they've done the work for that and gathered the evidence, marked it, had it moderated, then that we generate 8 random samples from that class, and those are selected and they go to a national moderator every year. So it's a massive process, constantly ongoing with this moderation business. So that's that process. Authenticity is a really important issue, important part of the process. At the beginning of the year, we require all of our students from year 10 upwards to sign an authenticity declaration, and you will have countersigned that. We did it electronically this year, and I have to say the failure rate on it was significant compared to what it was when we were doing paper. So I'm going back to paper next year. Sorry, trees. But it just takes far too long to try to get those forms back electronically. So look forward to that sometime early in term 1. Basically, I won't put any marks through to NCEA at all if I don't have an authenticity declaration signed by the girls. So that's the way it works, because they have to be cognizant of the fact that they are going to do work that is their own. And it's very easy to download a speech from the internet. It's very easy to buy an essay online. There's masses of websites that do that. So we have to be very clear that the work is the girls' own. And the best way to ensure that is because the teachers know what to expect from those girls. It's the build-up of that relationship in the classroom that allows the teacher to know the quality, the type of work that those girls will do. There's a lot of cross-checking, and that's a really important part of the marking and moderation process, that if one teacher is marking 5 classes worth of English essays, and there are 2 essays from 2 different classes that are identical, then that's going to raise an alarm. It's going to put a flag up. So immediately you can see that there's an issue with that. Authenticity, it is massive. We use various sites, and various teachers use different ones. Turnitin is the really popular one that you can put in and see how much work has been plagiarised. But it's an important learning between referencing, footnoting, paraphrasing and plagiarising. So those are quite distinctions that have to be taught. So authenticity is a big deal, and the reason it's so important is that this process has to be fair and transparent. Everybody has to have get the same deal. You have to, if a girl stands up in class and presents a speech that the teacher has never seen the draft of, when there are 3 checkpoints that she's missed, then that's suspicious. So we find that the authenticity, there's a big process that if we are concerned about authenticity, it's a process we go through, It's long, it's drawn out, it's incredibly time consuming. It's awful, because basically you're accusing somebody of cheating. And the important thing you have to establish is, did they? So that's important. If a student at the end of the marking process and the moderation process, they get their work back and they are unhappy with their grade, then they can appeal that. That is their right to do that. So we go through another process of the appeals, of processing that appeal. But the first thing that they should do is, that they have to do, is establish what it is in their work that they think matches the standard, the excellence part of the standard or the merit part of the standard when they got an achieved. So they have to say what it was that they thought that they did that was at that level, and they should have a discussion with their classroom teacher about that. So if at the end of all of that they still want to make an appeal, that's great. They download the form from Rangi Life and they get that work to me, and I process that appeal. And if it's a subject where, where it has been marked by the only graphics teacher that we have at the school, then obviously I need to find somebody in another school to moderate that. So but that process is open to the students. And then there's misconduct, which is different from authenticity because it's just straight out cheating in an exam or cheating during an event. And some internal assessments, not everything is project based. A lot of it is work that they'll do over a period of time, but some of it is like, for instance, chemistry titration. For instance, they do a couple of practices of titrating whatever it is that you titrate, and then they do the actual one that's the one that's being assessed, and they do that. And so if they cheat in that, and then that's a misconduct. And in the old days, you would have written your notes on your leg and you would have gone to the loo halfway through the exam and checked your notes. So those kinds of things all come under the misconduct. So for your daughter, what does NCEA provide? It's a tremendously flexible qualification. And in a way, that's its strength and its weakness, because you can pick and choose. And you can... What we find really useful is that it allows us to personalise the learning for your daughter, that there may be some standards that are better suited to her than others, and she might choose. Lots of subjects offer options, another internal or 2 externals. So they might have a course that's 3 internals and 2 externals, or 4 internals and 1 external. Okay, something like that. So there's some choice about what they're doing. So it's got fantastic flexibility. There's also flexibility if your daughter is ill for an extended period of time. So let's say she gets glandular fever in term 2 and she misses the learning that contributes to an English achievement standard worth 4 credits. Then if she has missed that, we can withdraw her from that. She doesn't miss her whole course. We can just take her out of 1 standard. We don't withdraw students from standards because they're not going to pass. And that's a really important thing that NZQA are staunch about. We're particularly staunch about that if they have begun the learning for a particular standard, so they've had some class time, they've done a bit of work on it, then they decide they're not going to do it, they're not very interested in that, and they're certainly not going to pass, we won't withdraw them from that standard. They get an N for that, not achieved. Because that's not fair. Otherwise, anybody who wasn't going to get the mark they wanted would withdraw from standards. So there's no checks and balances around that. However, if they haven't had the opportunity for the learning, so let's say it's a geography field trip and they're going to write a report on that afterwards, and they missed the field trip, but they've been in class for the work. The field trip was really important, but if they've missed that, then we can legitimately withdraw them from that. So there's flexibility around that kind of stuff. There is another grade for an external that's not available to an internal, and that's a DNS, did not sit, did not submit, did not attempt, DNA, did not sit. No, it can't be DNA, that's the other thing, isn't it? That's did not sit. So that's if you choose to go, if you go to the exam and you don't touch your paper, basically you get a DNS, and people tend to prefer that to an N, to doing badly in it. 2 documents are produced at the end of the qualification. One is the qualification itself, the level 1 certificate, for instance, the level 2 certificate, the level 3 certificate, and then there's the other one, which is their record of achievement. Now, it is true that the record of achievement only says what they've done. not what they haven't passed, so only what they've achieved. Whereas if they did level 1 and got a not achieved for the English speech, the not achieved will be on their level 1 transcript. But the record of achievement just has what they've achieved across all of the levels. So when they're applying to the universities for scholarships, etc., for halls, they have to present their level 2 they have to present their transcript, which will have everything up to the end of January in that calendar year. It won't have any of their current stuff. We have to get that from another document. But they also have to supply their NSN number, their national student number to the universities, and they can just go in and look by accessing it that way. So those are important documents. So I've talked about quality and the checks and balances around quality assurance. The constancy, it is a constant round of assessment. It does start at the beginning of the year and end at the end of the year, and they are being assessed for all of that time. But hopefully by going down to 19 credits, maximum of 19 credits, every subject basically for 2017 when we started this had to reduce one assessment, but they didn't reduce any teaching and learning. So the content, the learning was still there, but the assessment, they didn't do the assessment. Now, then there's all of the people who say, well, why would you bother to do any work in it if there's no assessment in it? And that's something that we hear constantly. The girls will say that to us. If it's not being assessed, I don't want to do it, which is NCEA's flaw. That has it killed learning. Did I love learning when I was at school, mind you, just for its own sake? I'm not entirely sure I did. So I guess that's a dream, that we would love students to love learning for its sake. What we want them to be able to do is to know how to continue to learn so that it becomes part of a journey rather than an end. And we'd love assessment not to be the driver of curriculum design and course design, and it kind of is. Can they manage? That's a really important thing. Year 11 is it's really a transitional year for them between being a junior and being a senior in lots of ways, and it has lots of pressures on them in year 11. It's the first year of NCEA. It's a really important social year. There's masses happening. So how to manage all of that? We get girls who become anxious, and so we try to work really hard to help them manage their well-being and to practice some mindfulness around their programs, and sometimes they might go to their dean or their tutor and maybe end up with me to discuss how we can help them to manage their course, because it's way better to come out of one standard or two standards in two different subjects than come out of an entire subject and then limit the options of going on with those subjects in future years. So that's part of the manageability. And I mentioned the personalisation before about how we can, they can have a voice in what they do to some extent, slightly less so at level 1, it's fair to say. As they move up the school, there will be more choice available to them about optional or compulsory standards that they're doing. So that's kind of part of the personalisation. And the final slide, the final slide which isn't there is the what next kind of thing. And I just want to touch on that because it's in the media, of course, that the government, Chris Hipkins, is engaged in a national review of NCEA as part of the review of tomorrow's schools. It started in May, and you've got until October to comment on if you have anything to say about NCEA. There's lots on the education website. If you Google education conversation, which is what they've called it, you can link to the 6 big questions in education that they want comment on. The first big question is why do level 1, and how can we help our students manage level 1, because we are, as I said earlier, one of the very, very few countries that does 3 years of national assessment, bang, bang, bang. And then if you go from there to university, you're still doing it year after year after year. So it's that is an important question. Why are we continuing to do level 1? And their proposal is that we do the credits, 20 credits in maths and 20 credits in literacy-rich subjects, and a project that goes with that. So we have no idea what that might look like or what that might translate to, but I think that in an ideal world we wouldn't have level 1, we would have level 2, but it wouldn't be called level 2 because there wouldn't be a level 1, and it would be a 2-year course of preparation for that level 2 qualification. And maybe we should, don't worry, I'm not going to do it next year, but maybe we should really be considering that. What is the function of level 1 as a qualification, not as a learning program, not as the content, not as the curriculum, but in terms of the assessments. But you're looking a bit scared now, so I'll stop that. But if you would like to read more, and there is lots of conversation out this, don't believe what the media says about NCEA. They have hated it forever, and we've yet to get any really objective stuff around NCEA. Thanks. Thank you.